Whether you have a 6-bedroom detached house, a studio flat, or one room, the principles of decluttering are the same. But we have to make decisions based on the space that we have. So today we're going to be talking about decluttering and organizing small spaces and how to make sure the clutter doesn't take over.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here are your hosts, Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Leslie.
We're delighted you're here to join us as part of your decluttering journey. So whether you're brand new today or have been listening in for ages, we want to say a warm welcome and thank you. It means so much to us you turn up every week to listen and support us while we talk all things decluttering and organizing.
We'd love to help more people with their quest for a clutter-free home, and our podcast is a fantastic way for people to be inspired to take action. We have a favour to ask. If you like what you hear, be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button on your podcast player and share us with your friends or leave us a review. Go to declutterhub.com/review to see exactly how to do that.
Now, Leslie, today, small spaces. This is actually quite a topic after my own heart because, of course, I come from one of the smallest countries in the world with a lot of people in it. So we have to deal with very small spaces and a lot of people.
I never thought about that, Ingrid. I've just got this idea of you in a little shoebox somewhere in old Amsterdam.
Well, I did live in Amsterdam in a shoebox. I think our flat was like 50 square meters.
Are you going to sing that song? Do you know that song, the Dutch song?
Which song?
I saw a house where there on the chair. No?
No. Oh, I think I've heard it, but I cannot recall this. I'm sorry. No singing from me on this podcast.
Old Amsterdam. What is it? Someone needs to tell us. I'm not going to sing the whole song because my voice is not quite so good as Ingrid's. But anyway, we digress. So you did not live in a shoebox in old Amsterdam, but you lived in a small flat in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So you know how hard it is to keep on top of small spaces. Now, this is something that gets talked about a lot in our communities, in our memberships, because some people are super lucky and they have nice big spaces that they can kind of breathe a little bit, and they can expand, they can make different decisions about their stuff. But sometimes people I've either got a really small space, they've only maybe got one room in a shared house, or, which happens quite a lot in our communities, people make a decision to downsize as well. And that involves shaking up the way that you've been doing it in the past and making different decisions about your stuff. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the decision making and how it's different when you have got to think about spatial awareness. Ingrid, what is spatial awareness?
I think that's something I've realized, Leslie, over the last kind of decade or so. For me, I think I've got spatial awareness, but I never realized that I had it until I started working as a professional organizer. So when I come into a room, I can kind of go, oh, are things in the right place in this room? Or can we move things around differently so this whole room starts to flow better and things start to fit a little bit better in where they are? And sometimes it means moving things out of a room and putting it somewhere else, but also sometimes it means putting stuff that's high up lower because it's bigger. I think for me, the space that you're in needs to work really well. So I think that's what I bring to a lot of my clients' homes, and they're like, wow, I'd never looked at it this way. I'd never thought about putting that there, but it makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's definitely about the placement of objects in a room and how to make the most of it. But for me, I think it's also about looking at volumes of stuff in a room and working out the storage that you've got in there and whether it's all going to go away. Or for me, it's about if someone's downsizing, I'm always very keen to understand, to see a floor plan and to see what the possibilities are so that I can look at the stuff in a current situation and go, this needs to be taken down to a third of what it is or half of what it is or whatever. So I think it's about an awareness of space, awareness of stuff, awareness of volume. And I think it's really critical. It's something that we definitely as professional organisers have to have, because that's our job, to understand whether things are going to fit, basically, if we're taking it down to the basics, and also to be able to implement that with people. It's something that a lot of people really struggle with, and it's not essential. But I think it's fair to say that it's something that a lot of people do struggle with, particularly when they're downsizing. So what we wanted to talk about, Ingrid, really, we wanted to talk about, is decluttering any different when you have got a small space to work with?
No, I think the principles of decluttering are the same. You decide if you want an item or not, if it enhances your life, if it fits in with your current lifestyle, if you're using it, if you're loving it, and if that's not the case, the item can be decluttered. And I think the thought processes of the decluttering are the same whether you're in a big house or a small house. You have to go through the same emotions when you're doing your decluttering.
Yeah, and I think, you raise a very valid point there, Ingrid. The crux of it is whether it fits into your current lifestyle, and the place that you live dictates your current lifestyle, and that's what it's about. So
Yeah.
you can't make the same decisions as you would if you're in a 6-bedroom house, because you haven't got the space to put it. But that's what your lifestyle is. In the same way, if you no longer have a corporate job and you stay at home all day, that impacts on your current lifestyle. And so we really have to factor that in when we're making those decisions. So the decisions in terms of the emotional connection to stuff is exactly the same, and the way that we declutter, the way that we organize is exactly the same. But we have to go a little bit deeper and a little bit harder than perhaps we would. So I think when we are downsizing or live in a small space, perhaps we need to challenge that comfort zone a little bit more than we would ordinarily.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, of course, if you've got a small space to work in, you just can't keep as many items as somebody who lives in a larger house. It's as simple as that. I mean, that's the harsh reality. If you don't have the space, you cannot try and squeeze a 6-bedroom house into a 1-bedroom house. And I think that's where people who downsize, they just don't realize that, because they've been living with their own items for their whole lives, and they kind of go, well, I'm now downsizing to a ground floor flat or to an accommodation with more help or whatever. But what they don't realize is actually they're going from a house that might have 4 bedrooms and a garage and a loft or a basement or an outbuilding or whatever, and they might go to a 3-bedroom house, and they're going to go, well, I'm just going to take everything with me. It's just not possible to squeeze a 6-bedroom house into a 3-bedroom flat. It's just not possible. So you have to really challenge yourself when you're downsizing to go, but what are the items that I really, really want and that are going to fit in the house that I'm going to live in?
In some ways, Ingrid, what I've found in the past is that when people are downsizing, or when people do live in small spaces, in some ways the decision making is a little bit easier, because you have to make certain decisions. Whereas when you've got space to spread out a little bit, you're allowed a little bit of leeway. Do you know what I mean? So in some ways, people who have small spaces can go for it more, and they do only have things in their homes that reflect their current lifestyle, whereas people in bigger homes are allowed that surplus a little bit, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you can also, when you have a bigger property, you can have more items that you use a lot less frequently because you have a room and a place to store them. Well, of course, if you're in a 1 or 2 bedroom flat or in a studio or in a smaller house, you probably have to be a bit more creative in, okay, this is an item I might only use once a year for one day for a certain occasion. Can I rent it, hire it, borrow it from somebody else? So I think you get creative, because it's simple. The fact, if you use a patio heater or a balcony heater one day a year, you can't have that in your flat. It's like making sure that you have the things in your home that actually work for you. It's the same. Another good example, Leslie, is what you talk a lot about, is like, why would you have a spare bedroom if you only use that for somebody that comes over 5 nights a year, while you're trying to squeeze everybody else into the other 2 bedrooms, while they could actually, your guests could either go into a local, hostel or hotel or whatever, or they can, you can get a sofa or an airbed. You have to work with what you have.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is making those different decisions. I mean, there was an example of it a little while back now at Christmas where one of our members downsized from a larger house into a kind of retirement property. And she had loved Christmas and all of the decorations that come with that. But she knew, and she said she had something like 8-10 boxes of Christmas stuff, which is not unusual for people who have larger homes. She went into retirement property. She's got everything in one box, but she's still enjoying it just as much, so you have to make those decisions, and those decisions come easily because you have no choice. You can't have 16 boxes of Christmas decorations when you have only got one understairs cupboard or one
Yeah,
storage
yeah.
cupboard in your retirement flat. So I think in some ways it is a little bit easier, but it takes a while to get there, particularly if you're going from a larger property and downsizing into a smaller property. So decluttering is absolutely critical. If you live in a small space, you have to take it down to the wire. So you really only have to have those things that are truly serving you. And that's going to involve quite a lot of decluttering and keeping on top of things. If you want your small space to work well for you, you really need to think about, what is it? What am I going to prioritize in my home? So decluttering is absolutely critical, and the emotions that sit behind that and the decisions that you make are absolutely the same. But as we've talked about, perhaps it is about challenging that comfort zone a little bit more. There's a couple of things that you could do as well that we've seen before in terms of things like photographs, sentimental items, paperwork. You can use digitization to take a lot of that out, can't you, Ingrid, as well? So one of the things that we certainly recommend when it comes to paperwork decluttering, because that can take up a lot of space, is go digital, and then it's not taking up valuable space in your home, it's taking up space in the cloud instead. So digitization is a big one. So what we can't do is we can't talk about how to declutter, because it's going to be very dependent on the small space that you've got and what kinds of things are important to you. But just know that you're going to have to just push yourself out of that comfort zone just a little bit more than you would ordinarily.
Yeah, I think digitization is key. I mean, you can't probably bring, 3 or 4 door filing cabinets with you to a much smaller space. You're going to have to get creative and, getting, maybe instead of having bank statements in paper, get them online in your email, do all of those kinds of things. Switch really to emails and digital. Another good thing that can really help you is a one in, one out policy. If you have a small space, if you buy something new, probably something else has got to go because there's just not the room for it. So you have to really think about, if you see new items, do I have the space for this item? Where am I going to put it? Where am I going to store it? Do I already have something similar that I can use, so I don't need to replace that yet? Or yes, this is really an upgrade of the current item that I've got, so I am willing to let the other item go. So yeah, it also involves, harder decisions when you're shopping and acquiring new things if you live in a smaller home.
Definitely. So we've talked a little bit about how to go about decluttering when you're having a small space. And so what we want to do is go to a break now. We're going to come back in a moment and we're going to talk about how to organize, things that you need to think about carefully when you have a small space to organize.
If you are ready for that clutter-free home you've been dreaming of and have been thinking about joining our membership for a while, we have good news. Until the end of February, we have opened up a 14-day access all areas trial of our membership. You can do one of our 30 courses, attend a success session, attend one of our Q&As, or get started on our roadmap. It's a great way to try before you buy and to see exactly what the membership can offer you. 14 days access for just $1, and it's all yours until the end of February. Go to declutterhub.com/trial for all the info. Hi everyone, welcome back to your Decluttering and Organizing Small Spaces podcast. Before the break, we talked about digitizing, a one in, one out policy, decluttering. So now let's talk a little bit more about organizing and some tips that we have for furniture as well. Leslie.
Yeah, I think, we talked a little bit before about spatial awareness and the fact that we can you and I can kind of scan a room and see potential problems, things that have been done well, and look at things and how things could be done differently and how we can incorporate more storage, more suitable storage and things like that. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the furniture that you really need to focus on when you're thinking about kitting out a small space. Now, we realise that a lot of people have already got furniture in place and you constantly go and change it all over. But when you are thinking about changing furniture over, again, you are restricted to the types of things that are going to work well within your space. So first things first, we wanted to talk about ottoman beds. Ingrid.
Yes, an ottoman bed, Leslie. I have one here at my house. So in my master bedroom, when we replaced our beds, we actually went for an ottoman bed, and I can indeed lift it up, and I have got a storage place under it. So I am storing some extra bedding and pillows and duvets and out of season duvets and those kinds of things in my ottoman bed. So that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I got one for the flat in London. Now, whilst it's not necessarily a small space, I don't have loads of storage there. And so what I found I could put in there is I could put things like an extra airbed, bulky things. I've got really bulky things, like you've got your bedding in there. I've got an extra space for bedding, but what I put in there is like, I put Christmas trees under there. I've got little extra things, so kind of bulky because it's quite a big bed and it's quite an expansive space, isn't it, Ingrid? So an ottoman bed is fantastic for big bulky items that you want to put somewhere. And then if you get a nice one, the kind of what do you call it, air assisted or something, where it's got like air pressure, I can't remember what that's called, where it kind of lifts up quite easily. You really need to think about whether you've got space to do that and put stuff in, so the size of the room is going to impact on it. But an ottoman bed is really quite useful, as are drawer divan beds that we call them here in the UK. So a divan bed, which is one with a base, and you can get drawers underneath them. But do again think about whether you've got the space to open those drawers up and put stuff into it, because quite often there might be a bedside table that means you can only have one drawer if it's a really small room. So you've really got to think that through, because you don't want to have to completely dismantle the whole bedroom to be able to put something in a drawer.
Yeah.
What I would say about an ottoman bed is I don't think it should be used for like everyday things. So I think it should be used for things that you only need occasionally.
Yeah. Things that or maybe seasonal things. You don't want to be pulling an ottoman bed up and down every single time you want to get, you don't want to get your current shoes or your current t-shirts or your underwear in there, because it's a little bit of a hassle, even if they're air assisted, to open up an ottoman bed. And of course you want to be, also think about the type of stuff you put in there. You want to, it to be clean. You want it to be tidy. You want it to be, you just don't want to have a whole mess under there. But I mean, let's be realistic, Leslie. If I wouldn't need this space, I would not take an ottoman bed. But if you're in a small space and you don't have choice, then an ottoman bed can really, really help.
Definitely. So if you've already got a bed, and it's not an ottoman bed, and you're like, but I do have some space under the bed, what am I going to do with that? Underbed storage boxes are really useful. Now, feng shui, if anybody practices feng shui, would say you should never put anything under your bed, whether it's an ottoman bed, whether it's an under storage bed. And there are issues with dust mites and things falling on top. So whatever you do put under a bed, whether it's in an ottoman or whether it's in a drawer, make sure it's covered, make sure, that it's not got space for kind of manky things from your bed to fall on top of it. So really important to keep that stuff covered, keep it in plastic, or if it's a drawer, then it's fine anyway. But use those divan beds. Don't waste that space by just having a divan that's got a base and nothing in it, So next time you're thinking of buying a bed, get one with drawers in it, or alternatively utilize that space under your bed for underbed storage boxes. Again, they need to be covered, lids on them. You need to make sure that you can pull them out effectively, because quite often they're quite bulky. And if you've only got very tight spaces at the side of your bed, you can't get the whole box out because you've not got space to do that. So it's quite tricky. But underbed storage boxes are quite useful as well, aren't they, Ingrid? And you can get some fantastic ones from loads of places. In particular, IKEA do really good value versions of those and do loads and loads of different options. If you are working with a small space, honestly, IKEA is fantastic. They have thought of everything in terms of maximizing the space in your homes. So IKEA is a fantastic space to start. if you are struggling a little bit for space.
Yeah. And of course, our friends at Store, A Place for Everything, have got some fantastic solutions as well. So do check out A Place for Everything if you're here in the UK. Yes, definitely, Leslie. Indeed. And you were talking about Feng Shui. Yes, Feng Shui says keep the under your beds free. And that is fantastic, of course, if you've got space. But if you're living in a tiny flat, you're going to have to find the compromise. And the compromise is probably going to be I'm going to need to put some extra stuff under my bed because otherwise I just don't have enough storage to put the things that I need and that I need to have accessible. So yes, underbed storage boxes definitely can help. Now, another thing you might want to think about is when we're looking at mainly, especially the living areas, you want to have furniture that's not very bulky. You probably can't have a big bulky armchair or a very big sofa that has a lot of kind of bulky arms on the side. You probably have to be really smart about the furniture you buy, the furniture itself.
Yeah, we sometimes it's just about looking at furniture before you buy it and think about what's going to serve me well, where can I maximize the space? And if you're working with a small space, it's important to have more sitting space than it is more arm space. And things like Chesterfield sofas and things like that, they've got these huge arms on them, which you could literally, with the two arms together, you could fit another person on that sofa. And it's a mistake that I see a lot of people making because they look so lovely, but think about the space. You could take those arms away. Even if you don't have more sitting space, you might be able to fit another cupboard in down the side or something, cupboard that you can put a lamp on or, with drawers underneath it. So really think that through. Even though we really, really want the big, bulky, comfy looking sofa, sometimes we can't always do that. And we have to think about that before we purchase them.
Yeah. And it's the same as well for tables. I mean, you might need to get a table that you can make larger and smaller. And you might not be able to go for that big table that you used to, be able to fit 12 people around. You might have to go, okay, I'm going to go for a table that has a kind of a folding leaf in the middle and I can stand it a little bit. And if I'm going to might have to put the chairs in one of the chairs in my bedroom or in a hallway somewhere or in a corner somewhere. So I have space to sit. You're going to need to get creative. And there's loads of options out there.
Definitely. So yeah, sofas are a big one, but just look at your room with a fresh pair of eyes and go, where can I fit some additional storage in? That's what this is all about, fitting additional storage in, because you probably won't have enough if you've got a small space, or you're really going to have to go deep on that. Another space that we really need to get on top of is the bedroom. So wardrobes are critical in a bedroom, or closet, as other people would call them. And so it's about maximizing the wall space that you've got. So people love a fitted wardrobe. If you are going to put a fitted wardrobe in, make sure you've really thought about how to configure the space inside that fitted wardrobe. If you've got a flat wall without sloping ceilings and things like that, you don't always need to go for a fitted wardrobe. You can go for a standalone wardrobe, but really think about what's inside it. Have I got the maximum amount of hanging space in there? Have I got drawers inside it? Can I pull those drawers out? Can I use sliding doors? Can I go higher towards the ceiling to put some bulky things, or do I need to put stuff on top of it? So really think all those things through to make sure that you get the maximum benefit from a wardrobe that you're going to put in. Again, IKEA is fantastic for fitted wardrobes. I mean, I've got a lot of design clients, and 9 times out of 10, we will use the IKEA pack system, which is so versatile and really good value for money.
Now, another thing you might want to consider if we're talking about bedrooms is getting bedside tables that have drawers. I have that in my own house as well. So I don't have a bedside table that is open in the bottom. I actually have a bedside table that has 2 drawers. So I use those for some socks and some underwear and some tissues and things like that. So I don't have to give up one of my other drawers where I put my t-shirts and my swimwear and activewear and pajamas and those kinds of things. So I really try to be smart about what furniture I have where, and I can put something in it.
How much activewear have you got, Ingrid?
I've got a drawer.
And what's in your activewear drawer?
Some jogging bottoms and some t-shirts and my socks for my trainers and things like that.
For your gym sessions?
Yes. for my walking in the morning sessions.
Active wear, that's so funny. I just imagine like this extensive collection
No,
of gym wear or whatever.
I should, Leslie. I
I
should.
know. Maybe that's something to work on. Yeah, you need to ditch the drawer until you get active.
Yeah.
Anyway, so loads of other things that we could talk about in terms of storage, but really look at it. You know, we had another member who is working with quite a small space, and she was like, I've had this dressing table for years, but what I've realized is it's taking up valuable space, and it'll be much better and it'll be much more useful for me to have a chest of drawers in there and to just put my makeup on or do what I need to do in the bathroom and not at a dressing table. And so sometimes it's about making these hard decisions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hooks on doors, use over door storage where you can when you're struggling. There's loads of things that you can hook over doors. There's things that shoes go in, there's things that scarves go in and bags go in that you can use. And so there's some fantastic solutions out there that you can really utilize the space that you've got.
Yes, yes. And I think lastly, of course, we love a Kallax. A lot of you who listened for a while know we love an IKEA Kallax unit. So versatile, so much space, fantastic different types of boxes and containers. And I think that kind of brings us to the next thing, isn't it, Leslie? Maximize the size of your containers in your drawers, in your cupboards, on your shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. And so don't have a big container that's half full. We really need to be making sure that those containers are kind of, well, we don't need to make sure they're full, but we need to make sure that we've got, you know, that we think about things in a way that only uses one container for one type of stuff. Really, it's important to get that, because so many people have got containers that they're just not using that much, and it's kind of wasted space, isn't it?
Yes, and I think as well, have the right size containers, the ones that fit the space properly, that you don't lose a lot of space behind it or above it or on the side. If you are struggling for space, the containers actually are quite important.
Definitely. And, you know, we've spoken about this before, Ingrid. We've talked about vertical storage. We've talked about using walls, shelves, hooks, anything that can hang on the wall. Get it on the wall if you can. In your kitchen, you know, make sure you use that space between your wall units and your base units to put magnetic strips for knives, to use for utensils, all of those kind of things that are going to help you when you've got a small space. So Ingrid, small spaces covered. I mean, there's a lot to it, and you have to work out your own space because every small space is completely different. Think about what you're doing, think about your current lifestyle and whether you are prioritizing stuff over space. That's what it's all about. When you know, what's more important to you? Do you want to have this kind of calm space that you can find everything, that everything is organized, or do you want to have more stuff? And so you've got to work out what's really important for you. But utilize the space that you've got and maybe incorporate some of these additional storage or furniture ideas it just turns the dial a little bit more. You know, you can just get an extra drawer here and an extra drawer there, or an ottoman bed here, and all of a sudden it can be a fantastic solution for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would love to know from you, what have you done to make the most of the space that you have? Let us know in the comments on the show notes. Go to declutterhub.com/229 and we look forward to reading what you've done. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the 10 things to declutter from your makeup. So that's it for this episode. We appreciate you listening in. Leslie, we're back next week.
We are back next week. Looking forward to 10 things to declutter from your makeup. And I think I'm going to practice what I preach in this podcast. I've got things that I need to do.
Brilliant. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.